Okay, so while the body is drying, I'm gonna leave that for a day or two. Let that stain dry, and then we'll clean it up and we'll start painting. And by clean it up, I mean, you know, take some really high grit sandpaper and just kind of smooth it off, because the grain always raises when you wet it, especially the first couple times. So now I'm gonna work on the neck a little bit, and I'm going to try, and where did that go? So I've done a couple of different things before, but first I'm going to start by trying to use a pencil. Ta-da! And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the frets and try and make it a little bit darker there. And what I found last time was the graphite that I put on, just the powdery stuff, that as soon as I went to use the oil that I was finishing it with, it kind of spread it around. The oil just kind of wiped and spread it around. So instead of that graphite, I'm going to try and use this. And then it will probably spread it around at least a little bit, but maybe I can get some of that same effect. We'll see. So as you can see, I've kind of added to a bit around the frets. And well, the frets look pretty good, but right now, since I did that, I'm going to hit the frets with steel wool, and then see if I can rub in that graphite a little bit. The steel wool should leave a little bit of a mess. Could add to the flavor. So let's see. So after doing one of them for a little bit, you can see it started to kind of wear in. I don't know if you really can see very well. It started to wear that in a little bit, so now it just looks a little faded around it. Can't tell that it was pencil. Pretty cool. Also, the frets look a lot better once you start polishing them, that's for sure. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think you can see, hopefully you can see that now it looks like there's just a little bit of, kind of ghosting, a little bit of bleed from those frets. Maybe it doesn't turn up so well on here, but I think it creates kind of a little bit of a shadow. You do see that even darker on a lot of the vintage fenders and vintage replicas that the custom shop puts out. But hopefully that comes through well on the camera, that you can see that look a little bit of ghosting now, and not quite as much as they do, but I am okay with that. It's pretty good. Alright, welcome back, guys. So now I'm going to show you, now that I have this lovely guitar neck with the vintage amber finish on it, really turned out slick, and I like the color. It actually looks aged. Now that I have this, I'm going to do some light relicing work on it. I'm going to wear on some of the frets, and I'll show you some methods for doing that. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a good time. Once I'm done with that, I'm gonna tape and clean off these frets because they now have nitro lacquer on them, so they look kind of brass, but they're definitely not brass. So I will clean those up. All right, here we go. So the first thing that I'm gonna do to the neck is I'm gonna do this little trick where I have just a little polishing pad on my Dremel tool here, and you can take that at a slow speed and wear off parts. Now, some people like to take a Sharpie and mark out all their parts. I'm just going to demonstrate and show you how it's done, and then I typically will look at pictures of other vintage. In this case, what I'm going for is, more of the 50s style. So I'll look at some of those necks and what they look like. And anyway, so here's how this goes. So now you can see those wear marks. Pretty sweet. You can also kind of tell, you see a little bit more of the color that's underneath here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and hit those little spots with a little bit of stain to really bring that out. I've seen a lot of people use different stuff, and I just haven't been too excited about. You'll see people use shoe polish. Then people will get that kind of gray look by dissolving some steel wool in vinegar. That's one way you can kind of go for that. I'm not like a huge fan of that, and it tends to be really subtle. So I'm going to use some stain and see how that works. So here we go.